Good evening.
Am I going to get your way?
Good evening and welcome.
You're okay.
My name is Blair Bowen and I'm the chair of the Sir William Campbell Foundation. First of all, we acknowledge the land we are meeting on is in the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga, the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Now, this foundation was formed in 1971 to save Campbell House from demolition and operates the museum today. This year, Campbell House is 200 years old. And it was 50 years ago, this past March, that Campbell House was moved from its original site in the old town of Toronto to this corner of Queen University. The museum board and staff are delighted to welcome you to this celebration of the special double anniversary. Over the years, many people have contributed to the life of Campbell House, and it's wonderful to see so many friends here this evening from the city, from the legal community and the arts community, from the neighborhood, past and present foundation board members and museum staff, including our former curator, Alka Weinstein, and the museum's first assistant curator, Shannon Todd.
Yay!
And Shannon.
People can move up a little bit, I think.
Yes, please. Also with us are the children of Richard Scrivener, the project manager for the 1972 house move, and Jocelyn Shaw, who could not be with us, actually. She is the great-great-great-granddaughter of Sir William Campbell, and a longtime museum volunteer. Now, after remarks from our speakers, we will raise a toast to Campbell House and cut the cake. Then the Rosebud String Quartet will play in the ballroom upstairs, and the party will continue. Now, I would like to invite our first special speaker, Councillor Joe Mihevc, represents the city on the Campbell House Board of Management. Councillor Mihevc.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here and to see a number of faces that I haven't seen in a while. Isn't it great to be post-COVID, fingers crossed, and actually see people without their masks and not on a screen. It's my pleasure to represent the City of Toronto here tonight. You may know that Campbell House actually occupies, it is a very special place in the story of our city. And it is my privilege actually to be the city representative on the board here. Not everyone here may know, but the City of Toronto actually owns this building. And that the building, however, sits on land that is leased to the Canada Life, which is next door, and that lease expires in 2099. So we have a little bit of time to figure this out, where the next place is going to be. So this event celebrates the 200th anniversary party for Campbell House, but is also an opportunity to celebrate the city and the foundation's long and shared stewardship of the house and its beautiful garden. The special relationship with the foundation began in 1971, 1 year before the house was moved. It was strengthened in March of this year, 2021, when the city increased its annual grant to the museum and also assumed the financial requirement to keep it in a state of good repair. So the capital funding now is coming from the city. And so I think it's appropriate to thank city staff who worked on that. And in particular, I haven't seen her yet here, but she might be here in the wings. Cheryl Blackman, who's the General Manager, Economic Development, Culture, and the Director of Museums and Heritage Services. This building is under Cheryl's wing, so thanks to her. Is she here? Could she? Nope, she's coming. I know she's coming this evening. To Joanne Pinn, Supervisor Cultural Assets, for her longtime care of this building. And to all the park staff who work with such pride and take such care in the gardens surrounding this building. So happy anniversary, Campbell House. May you live many more than 200 years.
Thank you, Councillor Mihevc. Our next special guest was to be the Honourable Vim Kochhar, who was the engineer that organized the move of the House and a former member of the Canadian Senate. Unfortunately, Vim is unable to attend this evening, but he was a large part of the momentum for this celebration, so he's especially missed. Tony Wight will read Vim's words. Tony is a volunteer board member of the Canadian Foundation for Physically Disabled Persons, which Vim founded in 1987. Tony?
I'm back here. Should I speak from the rear?
You can speak from wherever you want, Tony.
I better come forward. The light is better. Pardon me.
Maybe people can move forward so
There we are.
people
Wow.
at the door can get in.
Well, thanks very much for that introduction. Wow, this is quite an impressive crowd. Vim sends his regrets. He unfortunately is ill at the moment, but is doing well, so that's the main thing. So I'm going to read his speech, and we'll see, as long as the lighting is sufficient. Here we go. So it's just a read speech written by him. There are still lots of people in Toronto who will very well remember when the Campbell House was moved 50 years ago on Good Friday. The year was 1972, the date was March 31st. It was still fairly cold in Toronto. I remember that well. I had just completed 4.5 years of education across the street. So I knew the site well, but I didn't know the Campbell House. It wasn't there yet when I finished. It was a history-making and history-saving move. It took some vision, some faith, and some courage to save and preserve this historic house built in 1822, some 200 years ago, for the 6th Chief Justice of Upper Canada, Sir William Campbell. Vision, faith, and courage were necessary as a prominent architectural firm in Toronto had indicated that the building was too fragile to move. It was suggested that it should be moved brick by brick as London Bridge was moved and then reassembled on its new site. All this was changed when my boss, the late Harvey Self, and I inspected the building and put our reputations on the line. We said that the building could be moved, the historical integrity maintained, and it could be done much cheaper than moving it brick by brick. On top of that, our company offered our services for engineering and organizing the move free of charge as a goodwill gesture. This was almost 2 years before the move actually took place. However, by the time we got the green light for the moving job, we had both moved to another company, Scrivener Projects, who agreed to honor the Bechtel offer and take up the job without any fee. Before I give you the details about the engineering in simple language, I want to tell you something about this building. When Campbell House was built in 1822, the population of Toronto was approximately, anybody guess? Some of you were here. 1,500. And there were about 300 houses in the community. The only public utility was a water well, dug that same year near City Hall, the old City Hall, close to St. Lawrence Market. Yet 150 years later, to clear the utilities from the 1.5 kilometer route while the house traveled to this location cost approximately $100,000. Now about the man, Sir William Campbell, for whom the house was built. He was 64 years old when the house was built. Born in 1758 in Scotland, he joined the British Navy, fought in the American Revolutionary War in Yorktown, and was taken as a prisoner of war. After his release, he came to Canada, finished his law studies, was elected to the Legislative Assembly in Nova Scotia, and became Attorney General. After holding many positions, he became Chief Justice of Upper Canada, which is now, of course, Ontario. He retired That was not in Vim's notes, but I add that as a clarification. He retired in 1829 at 71 and died in 1834 when he was 76. When we got the green light for the move, much more work had to be done. After investigating many sites to move near Osgoode Hall, the present location on the south lawn of Canada Life was chosen. Canada Life leased the land to the City of Toronto in exchange for a tax concession, equivalent to the property's annual taxes. That sounded like a good deal. Again, not Vim's remarks, my own. The city then subleased the land for $1 to the Sir William Campbell Foundation. It was really an ideal location. The first route chosen for the move was along Front and Simcoe Streets. It was abandoned, however, because the cost to move utilities would be too high. The second route considered was along Front and University Avenue. It was abandoned because the parking garage at University and Front Street could not take the 300-ton weight of the building. The third and final route, going along Adelaide Street to University, was determined to be the most suitable because the street was wide enough and had streetcar tracks. The road would hold the structure because two streetcars crossing each other would exert the same load as the house. That was pretty smart. Some other trivia regarding the move. We had to move over a kilometer, as some pronounce it, of overhead streetcar wires, and 82 streetlights had to be turned. Many telephone wires, traffic signals, traffic signs, utility poles, etc. had to be moved too. But the biggest challenge was to find 63 manholes that would need to be shored up by 2x4s. We also discovered many old underground washrooms. I know, bring them back.
That sounds like a good time.
Those were modern times. Well, access to these washrooms had been from the lower level of the stores on both sides of Adelaide Street. The road had to be shored up above those old washrooms too. All of this cost $100,000. And the cost for preparing the house for the move and the move itself, the contractor was paid $102,899. Odd that they didn't just round that up. This brought the total cost for the move to over $200,000. For the engineering of the move, let me explain to you in simple language. The house measured 35 feet wide and 52 feet long and 41 feet high. It weighed 210 tons, but with beams and other equipment to move, it weighed 300 tons. To prepare the house for the move, we first had to repair all the cracks in the walls and brace the house at its weaker points. Then we punched holes in the basement walls, inserted 14 steel beams, and reinforced them with cross channels. Now the house was anchored, and the steel structure was ready to take the full weight of the house. Then 20 hydraulic jacks were placed under the steel beams to break the house from its foundation. The jacks were raised 1/16 of an inch at a time to keep the balance and stresses equalized. Jacking continued to raise the house to 10 feet off the ground as the basement was gradually filled with gravel and stone to ground level. It took almost a month to jack the house up. Moving was done on a 3-point system of 6 dollies with a total of 56 wheels. It would be like a tricycle or three-legged table, always balanced. It was winched all the way. The winches were mounted on 2 trucks anchored by 2 loaded gravel trucks. On the day of the move, I was up at 5:30 a.m. The move started at 6 a.m. Didn't take long to get around Toronto. The house was on the street in an hour. Going at the speed of 1,000 feet per hour, we covered a distance of 5,305 feet in 6.5 hours. Excuse me, at 1 p.m., we were at University Avenue and Queen Street. At this point, it started snowing. We left the house overnight on University Avenue in front of Osgoode Hall. That would maybe be a little dangerous considering who occupies Osgoode Hall. The next morning, we slowly lowered Campbell House at a 10-degree angle onto its current foundation. One thing is firmly etched in my mind: how wonderful it was to get the cooperation of all city departments. To ensure this is a name you'll remember, Toronto's Public Works Commissioner at the time, Ray Bremer, decided to walk with the move and make sure nobody made any trouble. I like that. I will conclude by saying that we are all like tea bags. We don't know our strength until we get into hot water. That was a new one for me. Once we committed that we were going to move this house intact, we removed all obstacles one by one. This was a history-making move, which has become part of our heritage. Thank you very much, and thank you. I may not be able to answer any questions, but go ahead.
I mentioned it to Liz tonight too. The plaque that's outside on the university side there, I might be wrong, but I think it says that this house was built on Edward Street.
Which was then called Duke.
Which is not true. It was on Duke Street.
On Duke. Was the name changed, or was it? Yeah, so it is the same street.
Yeah,
but a different name.
Yeah, Duke and
okay, well, that's interesting.
And I actually watched that thing come along.
Oh, did you?
Adelaide. I was in a building on University. In my office, I could see down, and there were all kinds of guys with poles.
Bob, it is the greatest regret of my life that I did not see Campbell House. I want to thank you, Tony, for making sure that Vim had a presence here tonight. So it's wonderful that you could read his words.
Well, my pleasure. A great audience, too. Thank you.
So, I'm Liz Driver, the current director of the museum. Campbell House is significant for several reasons. Its age, the beauty of the Georgian architecture, and its association with Sir William Campbell in Canada's legal history. Notably, Campbell oversaw the types trial, which was the first test of freedom of the press in what we now call Canada. The 1972 rescue of the house from demolition was an important moment for Toronto's preservation movement. And of course, the garden is a precious downtown green space and a landmark property at University and Queen that is linked by design to Osgoode Hall across the street. But there are also lesser known stories about Campbell House that connect with a larger narrative. For example, in the 1880s, industry displaced housing in the old town, and Campbell House became part of the Fensom Elevator Works, the first Canadian elevator manufacturing company. And I don't know if there's some Fensom family members here tonight. Put your hand up if you're from the Fensom family. We had some. There wow, 1880s.
That was my great-great-grandfather.
Wow, that's so wonderful that you're here tonight.
I used to play in the room upstairs.
Well, later,
the one with the pet alligator?
Yes.
Later, during World War II, the Hobbs Glass was headquartered at Campbell House, and the company's owner, Claire Wood, supported Japanese Canadians with employment, and this was during internment, okay? And also provided the Campbell House attic as the first home for the newlywed Japanese Canadian couple, Hannah and Harold Kawasoe. We are honored, and I haven't had a chance to see everybody come in the door, but I hope that Claire's son, David Wood, is with us tonight. Is David here? He's around the neighborhood somewhere. As the museum director, I have come to appreciate that the building itself contributes to the magic. The human scale, classical spaces, and the classical spaces of Campbell House are like a frame or a stage for human activities and interactions. Campbell House is not the sterile white box gallery, art gallery, and it's also not the soulless black box for theater either. Campbell House seems to inspire creativity, discussion, and socializing. Plays, a musical, an opera, and art of all kinds have been made specifically for Campbell House, or the art has been reinterpreted in the space. So some of these creations have also traveled to other museums and other places. So everybody who does something in Campbell House, we consider those people part of our big family, and it's growing all the time. The building has 19 large windows that connect it to an incredibly diverse community, to growing numbers of residents, Queen Street businesses, the Opera Ballet, Kitty Corner, municipal government at City Hall, and of course the judiciary also. This is the remarkable potential of Campbell House that I believe will allow this historic building to serve the city for many years to come. Campbell House has survived for 200 years. In 2022, we can certainly imagine another century as a vital part of our public life. So I just want to conclude by saying that it's a privilege and a pleasure always for the museum staff and I to be part of Campbell House's evolving history. And I would now like to invite Paul Scrivener to say a few words. Where is Paul? There we are.
So, ladies and gentlemen, friends of Campbell House, I'm delighted to be here on behalf of the Scrivener family, and this is a big moment for us. But first I want to give thanks to Campbell House and to Liz and her team for putting this together, inviting us all, and what a wonderful evening. If my father were alive today and here today, he'd be smiling from ear to ear, because it was a labor of love to move this place. His companies, Scrivener Engineering and Scrivener Projects, dealt with large projects, big mining projects, Ontario Hydro, that kind of thing. So moving houses really wasn't part of the repertoire. And I think, as Vim hinted, moving a house is like renovating a house. When you start to take things down and open them up, you say, oh, it's going to cost more than we thought it would. And will it actually hold up? Well, our family went down to Adelaide Street bright and early that moving day, and we walked along with the house. And my father was like the expectant father, pacing up and down and around. And the police were it's quite different now, because they allowed you to kind of walk around the house, and as long as you just didn't quite get in the way. And we made a day of it. And it moved without incident, and here it is. And it gives us great pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you very much, Liz.
Thank you, Paul. So, we're coming to the end. I would like to now invite Robert Watson, one of the museum's creative partners, to do a toast.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Oh.
So much. It's great. There's such a crowd.
That's a
Wait
good
for it.
question. In a second.
Oh, we go. Oh, wait. This is reach. Oh, hold it I might hold it like this. I'm a stand-up comedian, so I'm used to holding things like this. There we go. I'll just borrow like that. There we go. Liz, thank you so much for inviting me here to speak tonight, and thank you to everyone who spoke before. It's so great to hear about this house from so many different perspectives. And my personal experience of this house is just a sliver in time compared to its long history. In 2014, my husband Andrew and we staged a play in the upstairs ballroom of the mansion, something that I wrote called Chasing Margaret Flatwood. Yes, it's called Margaret Flatwood, not Margaret Atwood. We had to change the name for legal reasons. Then in 2017, we returned to the house to film our delightfully naughty web series called A Gay Victorian Affair. And the show is exactly as its title suggests. It's about gay people in the Victorian era who had affairs. Yes, you can clap for that. Yes. I'll take any and all applause. Oh my gosh. But it went on to win 4 Canadian Comedy Awards. And it was shown along with the interiors of this house, the beautiful interiors of this house, at film festivals around the world. And just these past 2 summers, in the gorgeous outdoor gardens of Campbell House, we have filled this property with laughter, producing a series of stand-up comedy shows, inclusive stand-up comedy shows called Courtyard Comedy. And at the same time, I have seen or known of so many artists that have passed through the walls of this house. From Ojibwe painter Anong Miigwan's beams to the internationally renowned photographer Teresa Zelenkova, to the over 40 performers of Courtyard Comedy who hail from so many different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, representative of today's city of Toronto. Now, this house tells us so much about our past, but it today serves as and continues to live as a hub for this city and this nation's culture and the arts. And I and so many artists are just so thankful for its existence. And also we are so thankful for the people who are its caretakers. So folks, if you could raise a glass with me, or if you don't have a glass, raise an imaginary glass. May this grand old house live to see many, many more years and serve as a monument to what is possible when we all work together. To Campbell House! To Campbell House.